right, and we are live. So, first, welcome everybody to this initial interaction and recording for Black AI Media on our narrative tour, The Road to 100, where we're going to be capturing and listening to 100 stories across the Black and African diaspora in the world of technology and AI. So, for our first It's amazing. Our first episode, we have the amazing, highly talented Eric Brown Jr. Eric, thank you so much for joining and agreeing to do this. And with that, I'll go ahead and open it up. I want you to just introduce yourself a little bit, talk about some of the things that you're doing currently, and then we'll get into some of our questions.
Sure. Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this 100, and I appreciate the consideration and the honor of being on this platform. By way of introduction, Eric Brown Jr., I am a technologist, a mentor, and coach based in the DC metro area. And my mission through my company, ELVTE Coaching Consulting, and just the work that I do in general is around leveraging innovation for equity, helping individuals and organizations leverage technology for business and societal impact. Specifically, I've been intentional about being able to empower individuals and organizations through AI literacy, allowing them to understand how to demystify various aspects of AI, specifically Gen AI, and how they can leverage it for impact within their business, but also their everyday workflows. And so I believe in learning by doing and really providing a safe space for people to be able to test ideas, but more importantly, being able to realize the value in a way that is relevant to their space and their community.
That's amazing. Thank you for that, share. And yeah, I definitely want to dig into more of your background, a little bit more of your experience. But I do have somewhat of a primary question that I think is going to drive these conversations that we're going to have here with narrative. And it's more of I guess we're thinking about an essay or something like that. It's more of our thesis statement that's going to drive.
Mm-hmm.
So that primary question for you, Eric, is related to the world of technology, AI. What does narrative mean to you?
No, that's a great point. Narrative is the story that one tells oneself or that one puts out in the world about oneself. I think that it's important to be intentional about telling the stories that we want to tell. Sometimes, my dad used to say growing up, if you don't choose what you want in the menu, someone's going to choose it for you. And I think when it comes to narrative, it's like if you don't craft the message that you want to share uh, to the world about yourself, your lived experience, or the things that you care about, someone else may make up something that may not necessarily align. And so I think as it relates to narrative, it is important for us to be very intentional about the impact, but also the aspects of our stories that we want to share with the world. And so that's something that uh, I've been intentional about. However, I also realize that media in particular allows more people to tell their story, whether it's through a blog or whether it's through social media. I think there's more ways than ever to be able to share a narrative. And so I think it's important to be intentional about what that is, but also understand its impact on society.
And I would actually really concur with what you said. Your dad shared. I think that it's extremely powerful. It's something I kind of tie into my own life. So hearing that's something that's resonated with you is definitely something that kind of sits well with me. I'm really thinking about that in terms of narrative, and I appreciate that share. And with that, just thinking about again that idea of crafting our own story, I want to just offer a little bit more space for you to take some time to tell us a little bit about your journey in technology and AI, and how did you get started, and kind of what led you to where you are today.
Yeah, this when I think about technology, for me it's a lifestyle, and it takes me way back. I was actually challenged early on in my academic journey, both academically as and socially. had challenges in elementary and middle school to the point where I was taken out of public school and I was homeschooled for a season. And in that time, it was difficult, it was challenging, it was isolating, but I was able to find um, sources of curiosity and joy being able to tinker. I started taking apart remote control cars, started uh, playing different video games, Nintendo, Sega, and just being really interested in technology and how it worked. And that curiosity led me to starting to build computers. And I realized that my knowledge about computers and how they work was something that in other areas of my life were I was deemed a bad influence, but when it came to technology, people looked to me as someone that could support as an advisor at a young age. And so that was kind of my start as far as saying, you know what, this, bits and bytes and software and hardware combination allows me to open up doors that originally were closed for me, and allow people to be able to see me in a different light from the narrative and the brand that I had before leveraging technology. And so when I went back into public school, I really leaned on the ability to be able to help my teachers with the projector and being able to, create different programs, and learned a lot about Linux, and I leveraged that skill set to get different jobs, selling computers, building computers. And that really led me on a journey, even though in undergrad, I didn't formally study computer science or information technology. I leveraged that skill set. People call me computer love in undergrad, and I leveraged that ability to build, to troubleshoot, and to solve problems in that way to land internships in the industry, and ultimately got to work at Microsoft for about a decade. And so I've been very hands on, but ultimately it's been a lifestyle of saying, you know what, I'm curious how things work. But more importantly, I realized that me being able to solve these problems is able to help individuals in the environments that I'm in.
That's amazing, and I appreciate the idea around tinkering and you know, starting off really young and taking things apart, because I have a son, 4 year old, who actually I kind of see some of that similarly in him, with being really interested and intrigued by how things work, how things function. Again, even thinking about, breaking things down, kind of that engineering type of brain. So I really appreciate you sharing that, and actually seeing where you are right now. It gives me a lot of hope, and it makes me want to really encourage that. So I appreciate it. And related to more so some of your work more recently, like in your business, and even some projects that you've kind of focused on and worked on. Can you share what your motivation has been behind, producing and creating, even supporting within the technology, and more specifically the AI space? And with that, how did those things come to light whenever you're infusing your work and kind of driving forward some of those projects and new systems ideas that you've been working on?
Yeah, yeah. So, as a leader, a dreamer, an achiever, a scholar, someone that thinks about technology from a strategic lens, I have primarily spent the majority of my career helping leaders understand the art of the possible on the edge of the forefront, being able to help early adopters and innovators. However, I realized in that space, although it's great to be able to be on the edge and push things forward, when you think about the technology adoption curve, you have those innovators, early adopters, but then you have the majority and the laggers. And it's like, well, majority of individuals in the organization are not the innovators. And so one of the things I noticed over time is saying, you know what, how are we ensuring that we're translating these innovative ideas, this value, these narratives, so that the majority understand? And how are we being intentional about being inclusive and collaborative, and making sure that the individuals that are going to be leveraging these tools, that are going to be using it and this will be impacting their lives, are a part of the process of getting that feedback of saying, you know what, we see this vision here, but how are you taking others on the journey with you? And so, as a coach, as a technologist, my mission really is about asking those thoughtful questions around, all right, if this is the answer, what is the question? And are we really falling in love with the problem? And are we ensuring that the stakeholders across the spectrum are invested and feel like they are a part of the process? And that's something that doesn't always naturally happen. And so, whether it's within a Fortune 100 company, whether it's with a small, medium sized business, or a startup or nonprofit, I leverage the same kind of framework of understanding what problem are we solving and how can technology be a catalyst for that change we want to see, but also realizing that, people and process are just as important. And I think it's important to really invest in that human intelligence and be able to ensure that individuals are able to fully embrace and understand, what the value of the change is. Because when people don't understand the value, they resist.
Awesome. Yes, and with that, I want to go a little bit further with that and really think about it's a two-part question actually as a follow-up. It sounds like for you, you're more so at the forefront of empowering organizations, entities, individuals as they're looking to create some type of lasting impact within the space. Would that be okay to assume?
Yes, yes.
And with that, I mean, maybe you don't have to get as specific as talking directly, but dropping names or anything like that. But could you share some insights about a particular project or situation that you actually found a lot of passion in, and talk a little bit about what I guess, what your influence was and what the outcome was within that when you're servicing and supporting others?
Yeah, so I think one of the areas that I focused on over the past maybe 5 years plus is emerging technologies. One in particular being augmented and virtual reality, mixed reality technology. And I found that being able to change the way you see the world, being able to see things from different perspectives, being able to have annotated information or additional data overlaid on type of buildings or on top of products can be very valuable. And I found that the enterprise found a lot of valuable insights leveraging these tools. However, when it came to smaller organizations or foundations, they didn't necessarily have the resources or the know how, but they realized that there was potential there. And so I work with several foundations and agencies to be able to say, how are we able to take emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, but more importantly, augmented and virtual reality, and say, how are we able to tell stories around communities, going back to narrative, leveraging these devices. But more importantly, how are we taking 360 cameras, be able to go through the town, be able to have the people tell the stories, tell the narrative, but have other people experience it. And so I was influential in being able to be an advisor and thought leader, helping organizations do that within the BIPAC community in particular, but also allowing students to be able to explore different career opportunities through immersion. So, whether it's being able to do a mock surgery, or be able to go on a space station, or be able to visit another location and speak a different language, leveraging VR. I leverage my expertise in the virtual mixed reality space to be able to empower museums and organizations to say, hey, how are we able to help students get exposure to something that typically wouldn't through these mediums? And so that was kind of a first phase. Now, kind of the hot topic is AI in particular. And so chatbots are something that I work a lot with. I was a part of a hackathon at Afrotech where I built a chatbot to be able to help students be able to explore what are the interests that they may have in STEM, but more importantly, how are you able to get matched with local nonprofits or organizations where you can get mentorship and guidance through the journey? Because it's one thing to get information, but transformation happens within relationships. And so I think that uh, the tools and the experiences that I create or that I advise around is being able to ensure that the people, process, and technology merge well together.
And that's amazing. And it made me reflect, I think, on one of our initial conversations. I think when we first actually sat down and had a one-on-one chat, we did go into talking a little bit about education. As you know, that's kind of my background and scope of work. And I definitely was intrigued by some of the things that you were sharing and mentioning around supports, especially thinking about career development and foresight and looking to the future as it relates to using technology like AI. And even thinking about this now, in which you've already shared about your experience as a young man and how that kind of led you into this pathway. I'm interested because I think for some of the youth, the things that you're producing and creating might actually be kind of their segue. So I'm thinking in terms of uh, related to your career pathway now. Um, Sorry, can you hear my dogs?
Briefly, it's all good though.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna cut for editing, so we're good. Somebody rang my doorbell. But what I wanted to get to was related to the pathway that are on and kind of trajectory as a young man, but now thinking about your career pathway, we've kind of carved out what that moment looked like when you were young and helping your teachers, right, set up their technology in the classroom. But has there been a defining moment in your professional career where you realized that the potential impact of your work in tech and AI, augmented reality, VR, did you have a moment of kind of aha as an adult that said, I'm going to do something great in this space?
Yeah, I did. I actually had a mentor. I was at Microsoft for several years, and I had some. I still do have some amazing mentors. And I had one mentor in particular that says, "Hey, Eric," he pulled me aside, says, "You're doing some really great things in the mixed reality space." But he asked me, what are you going to do 5 years from now? Where do you want to be? And I was like, I really didn't have a clear answer. And he's like, I see your potential. And I think that, if you had the opportunity, you will be doing more than just focusing on tech. And I feel like you're doing a lot within the community, things of that nature. And so that conversation really made me be introspective and saying, well, what do I need to do to have increased capacity to make an impact in the world that's leveraging technology, but it's not just strictly focused on technology, that really has a humanitarian, a social impact element to it, focusing on education as well. And so, long story short, I actually applied to go to Harvard for grad school, focusing on a program that was very specific around technology innovation and education. And that program, getting accepted and going through that 2 year program, really was a shift in my career of saying, you know what, Eric, this is not just about learning the bits and bytes to help solve problems specifically. It's about, well, how are we able to think thoughtfully about learning and being able to shift of being able to create something that doesn't exist yet, or how to really transform how we learn and the mediums of which we go about learning to be able to create economic mobility for individuals that also oftentimes don't do well in traditional school systems. And so, to that point, one of the things that came to mind, and I learned a lot about myself during grad school, and even reflecting back on my educational journey and going back to the struggles that I had early on, I realized that there's a framework called universal design for learning, and I found that the way that I showcase my brilliance isn't always aligned to the systems and the standards that were in a traditional school system. And so, although I figured out my way and I consider myself to be a life hacker, I realized there are a lot of individuals like Eric that are brilliant, but at the same time, the way they showcase their brilliance may not necessarily align to traditional school systems. And so, long story short, one of the things that I've been intentional about and I'm still doing now is saying that in addition to working with enterprises and things of that nature, like how am I able to work with non-traditional learning environments, whether it's a nonprofit, a foundation, or social organizations, conferences, to be able to ensure that people are able to learn in context, but also be able to tinker in a safe space to learn and grow, to be able to not only just be able to acquire information, but understand how to apply it in a way that it actually changes their lives. And so I find that there's sometimes I can do that in a traditional environment, whether it's a school, university, or learning environment, or I'm able to do it in non-traditional ways. And so I find that it's important for us as a people, as a community, as the world, to be more inclusive of the way that we go about learning, but more importantly, go about showcasing understanding.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And just thinking about your work and as it relates and pertains to kind of the social impact aspect of things, I'm interested and kind of curious, just related to that, because you mentioned being able to kind of maneuver in different spaces, different, traditional and non-traditional. Within that, have you found that there are unique challenges when working in your space as a entrepreneur, as a technologist? As a consultant within that sphere. And then I'm also curious, whenever you do come across those particular challenges or concerns, like how do you overcome those things?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely several challenges. I think when it comes to focusing on community-driven efforts, typically there's some type of sponsor involved in that process. Oftentimes, when you're trying to empower um, individuals and organizations that historically have been marginalized, there's not a lot of funding there to keep things sustainable. And so, I think sustainability is always one of the biggest things that is challenging, and being sure that you have the right stakeholders in mind. And so I would say that overcoming that challenge is, for me, has been able to really um, partner with individuals who have already been embedded in communities, understand the needs from the perspective of the community. I think oftentimes there are various stakeholders that have their own initiative and say, hey, this is what you need, and here's what we're funding. But it may not necessarily translate to the individuals that are being served. And so I think for me in this process, I've been very curious, really keeping things community centered, but also realizing that in order for things to be sustainable, you have to have different business models and systems in place to be able to make it run. And so, one, building relationships, but also being able to create systems to say, hey, how is this going to be sustainable when I'm no longer in the equation?
Awesome. Yeah. And I really want to hone in a little bit on that, because I think really considering the human aspect, the humanitarian piece of this is extremely important. Where I definitely see a lot of kind of business and revenue driven efforts happening, but I think it's really important to highlight the work that you're doing, especially when you're considering community driven efforts and things that are looking to support and uplift the community, the future, especially again thinking about it from the lens and perspective of being an educator myself and a father. And I'm interested and kind of curious, even related to that. Um, is there something that you're really excited about right now, as it relates to what we're seeing with tech and in the work that you're doing in particular?
Yeah, I think that, I've seen different ways of innovation. And I would say that this point in time that we're at is an inflection point, that there's going to be a shift that's going to impact so many different aspects of society. When we look back about the internet, how it changed the way we communicate, the way we spend money, the way we to collaborate, the way we do everything now leverages the internet in some way, form, or fashion. I believe this coming wave is also going to be very influential in the way that we interact as people, the way we communicate, the way we do business, etc. And I think that uh, it's exciting, but at the same time, I think it's a level of excitement that has levels of cautiousness. But I believe that whenever there is a wave, there are individuals that ride those waves. And unfortunately, historically, when it comes to technology, the individuals who have most benefited of these innovations don't necessarily look like me or you. And so I think it's important that I empower community, students, individuals to say, hey, how am I going to be a stakeholder in this innovation? And how am I not, how can I go beyond just being a consumer to being a creator and have levels of ownership in these mediums, in these platforms, to be able to change family trees in regards to economic mobility? And so I'm excited because I think we're still at the early stages. And so for those that learn, tinker, experiment, but also implement these new different types of mediums, there's opportunity for there to be new businesses, new streams of revenue that didn't exist before. In addition, there'll be new jobs and opportunities that didn't exist before. And I think that sometimes historically there were certain requirements or pathways, but whenever you're doing things that on the edge, there is no previous knowledge necessary to be able to take advantage. And so I think that gives individuals a clean slate to say, hey, if I'm willing to put in the work, willing to exercise my curiosity in a way of building something new, this could potentially change the way I live.
And I want to build on that a little bit, actually, and think still going and peering into the future, because you did mention and kind of the reasoning even behind why we're doing this series as far as narrative goes. The road to 100 is making sure that we allow space and opportunity for our voices to be heard, and to kind of showcase that we are doing amazing things. So thinking about your work, in education, excuse me, in technology, as a consultant, as a business owner, as someone who is a thought leader and a creative and a producer, how do you see your current work contributing, basically across the African diaspora, and potentially even going into global communities? Because we want to span this, as far as possible. How do you see yourself, and what role do you kind of see yourself playing in that?
Yeah, I think for me, I've always grounded myself in being an educator. Similar to you, I think that behind me is a Yoda. I really value the wisdom, insights, and perspectives of that type of archetype. To say, you know what, I'm not the hero. I am the support and facilitator, and I think that my goal in this season is to create opportunities, programs, services to be able to help others realize value leveraging these technologies in a way that one does elevate the narratives within our community, but I don't want to limit it to just the BIPOC community as well. I think this is a global society, and I think it's important for us to be able to share these narratives with other communities. And so, my work within the AI space in particular, I do conferences within the BIPOC community, but globally as well, supporting other communities. And so, I think it's important to have that cross pollination of ideas to be able to showcase other type of innovations, but more importantly, as a human human intelligence holistically, I think it's important for us to be able to work together to be able to create impacts in society. And so, I believe that my efforts of as bringing insights, but also creating opportunities for that hands-on learning is part of the value that I'm bringing to the marketplace.
And do you find that you are more so moving based on a set or a system of core values? And if you do kind of feel that you're in that vein, in that space, would you mind sharing what some of those core values might actually be?
Yeah, I do have a series of core values that lead myself, but also my entrepreneur efforts and its growth. I think that, just because time goes by or just because you're moving doesn't mean you're actually growing. And so being intentional about that process, um, innovation, which is also kind of in line with that as far as being able to take different business processes, technologies, and be able to um, move them in different capacities or intertwine them to create something net new, more efficiencies, and then integrity. I think that it's great to be able to grow and be able to move and be at the forefront, but without the lack of character and integrity, it's not sustainable. And I think that trust is foundational. And so those are three of the principles that I live by, but also within the work that I do is being able to ensure that people are able to grow, that they're able to leverage innovation in a way that creates equity and sustainable opportunities for themselves and their community. But also realizing that it's important to have the character as you're interacting with individuals, but also as you are interacting with the technology, that you have levels of ethics and moral consciousness, and being able to create new things.
Yes, definitely. And I really see that in having conversations with you, seeing the work that you're doing. The integrity piece is, I think, really heavy, especially considering the social impact, communal support, and type of focus. I think is extremely important. So I'm glad that we have you in that space, and kind of moving there. And thinking about that, looking forward, I'm sure everybody who's been listening, I know I am, is really interested in hearing. Well, what's next for you? What's next for Eric Brown Jr. And are there any exciting developments that you can share with us?
Yeah. So what's next for me is I think that I love learning and building in community. I think that it's valuable to um, create new things, but not necessarily in a silo. A random analogy, I used to run cross country growing up, and I wasn't that great at it initially. But I started to train with someone who was ranked number one in the organization that I was a part of, the conference. And over the next year, I became like ranked number three in that district. And I realized that who you run with matters. And I think it's important to be able to learn and grow with individuals who are actually practitioners doing the work. And so in this season, I've been really intentional about creating spaces and opportunities to not only just talk about what the theories or the opportunities, but to say, hey, how am I actually able to build and develop and strengthen my skills with individuals who've been doing it? And so whether it's virtually or in person, I've been making a lot of intentionality around creating spaces for people to learn by doing and be able to build that muscle, but more importantly, to be able to build the relationships with people who are running the same race or also wanting to be able to leverage these tools to create impact in their business and society. And so, one thing you're going to see a lot from me is opportunities and spaces to be able to do just that.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And really just thinking about, again, how you're pouring into other people um, from the space of integrity and those core values that you mentioned. And I know I'm really excited to see what developments come from the work that you're putting in, the efforts, and who you run with matters. That I think I'm gonna I'm gonna sit with that for a while and really think about even just my overall kind of network. And we hear a lot of kind of very buzzword types of phrases and things like your network is your net worth. But I think it's a different feel whenever you see a living embodiment of something like that, like yourself, and the people that you're associated with. So I'm just proud to be a part of that group, and to be running with you. So major shout outs to you for that. And I want to jump a little bit into thinking about your work now, and let's think big picture, right? Let's dream, because as we've seen with a lot of youth, there are no confines on their dreams. So I want to create that opportunity for you, and let's hear on your end. Let's say that you had unlimited resources. How would you expand the reach of your current work and what you're doing and what you want to see in the future?
Yeah, I think that something that I'm aspiring and working towards now is I realize that uh, we live in society of systems. And some of the systems are antiquated and are not efficient. But to be able to create a great opportunity in one community, one environment, one conference is great. But if you're able to infuse those principles, those opportunities within a system that's sustainable, that's the dream. And so, whether it's being able to partner with all the libraries in the United States to say, you know what, we have hackathons, we have AI literacy available, leveraging the funding and the resources that the government provides to these public institutions, that all HBCUs have the opportunity to have garages and hackathons and be able to have that learn by doing model that's also available for the local community. So whether you're enrolled in a college or not, you still have access to that space and can still build. Um, I think having those same models globally, those are the type of things that I'm envisioning of saying, well, it's one thing to do it well, but how are these things ingrained in the fabric of how society operates? Creating these opportunities, specifically, like I said before, with the universal design for learning framework of saying, you know what, everyone is not going to go and want to be enrolled in a four-year institution. Even now, there's a whole push for certifications and being able to change requirements as far as corporate roles. But I think as this new wave of innovation comes and different levels of co-collaboration with I think it opens up doors of saying, well, the time to value and the time for upskilling and leveraging these tools is going to look different. So it's not going to take years. And so I think that, how are people who maybe have been out of school or no systems for a long time, how do they get this knowledge and be able to take advantage of that? But then also within traditional school systems, how are they able also to have more flexibility, understanding that what they're going out into as far as the world is going to look different every 3 months?
So I'm hearing libraries and HBCUs need to get in contact with you. That's what I'm taking from that. Amongst others, organizations, groups. You mentioned nonprofits, which I think are amazing, and definitely thinking about even the work that the intent behind Black AI media and kind of putting a lot of these things together. you know Process is extremely important, as you mentioned, and I think that a lot of those systems and things can be refined. And I see a lot of the kind of integral pragmatic approach that you take to things being extremely valuable. It's been valuable to me. We've had conversations and even converged on some of the stuff that I've been working on. So you've assisted with that, which I am extremely grateful for. And I think that those things going into the future and how we're shaping things can definitely play a key role. So major shout outs and appreciation to you for that. And considering looking again, thinking about the work that you've been doing, all of the effort that you've been putting out, right, the artistry that you've been crafting. Is there, if you can put it into words, a legacy that you hope to leave behind with the work that you're doing in the space?
Yeah, I think that there's this quote around, people don't remember what you do, they remember how you make them feel. And I think that although I'm very focused on innovation and technology, I think the thing that my mentor called out was like, hey, Eric, I think there's something else that you bring to conversations, to situations that go beyond just the bits and bytes. You're not necessarily just about the nuances of the programming, but around, how does this actually fit into the bigger picture? And so I think my legacy is that, Eric cared, that he took the time to be still, to be present, to listen, to understand before coming up with some type of innovation or solution. But he provided individuals with the access, the opportunity, and the belief to be able to do the same themselves. And so I want to be able to create other leaders and create at least the capacity in the space for other leaders to find their way and their spark. And I think that's what I want my legacy to be.
And that's an amazing way to round this out. And for the listeners, Eric, if you wouldn't mind, let us know where we can reach you, where we can see your work, how people can get in contact with you.
Yes, so I am available on all social media platforms under Eric Brown Jr. underscore, LinkedIn, Eric Brown Jr., and you can contact me at eric@ericbrownjr.com.
Amazing. Thanks again for joining and sharing your insights. Look forward to seeing all the amazing things from you. And yeah, much love to you, Eric. So this has been an amazing initial episode of Narrative, The Road to 100. And we look forward to catching everybody on the next one. And with that, peace and love. Thank you.